Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 168, and this is a show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show, so let's get started. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week, and this was kind of a smaller week for me. I had I think 17 books. My normal is like usually 20-ish books. So let's get started. What was worst pick of the week? What was number 17? And that is Avengers issue 1. So yes, Avengers, one of my more anticipated books for this week, was worst pick of the week. I was very disappointed with this book, and I was expecting, I don't know, more from it, because I know I didn't really like all different Avengers, but because Champion started out so well, I'm like, this is what it needed. It needed to separate, and Champions that proved that for me, but Avengers didn't. I still feel like there's no chemistry between these characters. I didn't really feel like the artwork really fit for this book. And I love this artist. I loved his work on Elektra. I loved his work on Weird World, but it just did not fit for the Avengers. It didn't get me sucked into the story. And then some of the characters were off in this issue. Like Captain America and Thor have this scene where they've known each other. They've been in, I guess, a romantic relationship too off panel. So they know each other. Captain America knows that Jane Foster is Thor, but there's a scene where Captain America tells Thor, oh, you wouldn't understand the saying because you're not Midgardian. So I would understand that if Captain America didn't really know Thor, didn't know that Thor was Jane Foster, but he knows. So he knows that Jane is Midgardian, technically. At least that side of her is, or at least she used to be. So that was weird. So those type of character moments just didn't work for me. And then Kang, I feel like, comes too soon because we don't really know the team very well, so why bring the big gun like this so forcefully in this issue? So overall, I gave Avengers issue 1 2 stars. I was very disappointed with the book. Obviously, I'll still see where it goes, but still disappointed. Moving on to number 16, a book I'm always disappointed with, and I really just don't know what to do with. I don't know if I want to drop it. I don't know, because I don't like reading it, and it's a shame. I want to like this book a lot, and that is Green Arrow issue 10. So with this issue, once again, I just felt bored because it's these characters going on adventures. It's Black Canary, Green Arrow, and Diggle hitting things, but I just feel like that's all it is. The characters never grow. There's a different scenario where they have to fight together, but there's never character moments that really make these characters grow organically. So that is my disappointment with Green Arrow that's really heightened with this issue. So Green Arrow issue 10 gets 2 stars, and that is number 16. Moving on to number 15, which is Frozen, issue 2. Not a bad issue, but I still feel like they could do more with this series. It's such a big and beloved franchise, so I just want more from it. Some of the stories just kind of feel lackluster to me. None of them really, I think, bring the themes that I liked from the movie, and I know you can't obviously, like, progress the plot that much because there's gonna be a sequel to Frozen, but still, I feel like you can make Arendelle bigger. You could do more. And the characters they introduced, the newer characters I don't really like, and then the other stories feel very repetitive. I mean, obviously you have to be, but it's just not fun. So, but the artwork is really good, and of course I'll continue to read it just because I do like Frozen. But yeah, I want a little bit more from this series. So Frozen issue 2 gets 2.5 stars, and that is number, I think, 16. Let me see. That was number 15. So now we're moving on to number 14, a book that I guess is a little higher than usual, and that is Shade, the Changing Girl, issue 2. Where I feel like I'm still in the same place with Shade. I feel like the book has potential because you do have these 2 weird, interesting characters, and I personally like the high school aspect, but it's still really weird, you know? Especially when you get away from the high school, it gets really confusing, and I'm just not really interested in Luma's world, and I understand why you have to tell that story, because Luma is an alien, you want to know more about her, but they're not making that world very interesting for me. But the high school is interesting. With the little stuff we do get from this issue, it's interesting, but again, it's a very weird book, so I think it's gonna be a slow burn. I'll give it, again, more of a try. I'm reading it digitally, but it's a weird one. So I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Moving on to number 13, I know some people might not agree with me on this one, but Batman issue 10. So Batman issue 10, I think, slows the story down a bit, and even the narrative, because the narrative is Catwoman, but it's not so obvious that it's Catwoman until towards the middle or end of the issue. Kind of wish they made it a little bit more obvious in the beginning, because then you kind of have to read it again to really get the full story, which, you know, might be a good thing, but for me, I didn't really want to read it again because I didn't love the story that much. But yeah, it's an okay book. It's a lot of just action stuff that we've seen before between Bane and Batman. Batman breaks his back. So it's a very Dark Knight Rises in a lot of ways, which is weird, but intriguing. But yeah, it's just a slow part of the story. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. It doesn't really progress the story too much and feels a little repetitive to me. But if you're a huge Catwoman fan or Bane fan, you might really like this issue. Alright, moving on to number 12. Disappointed to see this so low, and that is Josie and the Pussycats issue 2, where I like that this book is slice of life. I enjoy it, but the situation they were in here was a little over the top for me. I don't know. It felt a little cheesy, where they do this like Mad Max battle where we have one of the characters, she's like playing the guitar as they ride this kind of motorcycle thing, as they try to defeat this motorcycle gang that wants them to play forever in their club. So, and also, I think some of the lines fell flat for me. That's why it's a little lower. A lot of the humor I didn't really laugh at. And, you know, humor is hard in comics. But, yeah, I did like issue 1 a little bit more. But issue 2 kind of faltered, but still very excited for issue 3. So, Josie and the Pussycats issue 2 gets 3 stars. And that was number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is Superman issue 10. Superman was a fun issue. I like the story a lot, but I think once again the art gets in the way. It's very dark in scenes where I couldn't enjoy the scene to the fullest. It felt very crowded, some of the paneling, and I just don't like kind of this really over-the-top, abstract, cartoony artwork. The eyes just look very anime in a lot of ways, which I don't think fits this book. So I just don't really like the art style, and again, that's what kind of drags me out of the book. But I did have a fun time between the Damian and Superboy dynamic, but it's weird. I think the reason this is lower is because Teen Titans did such a good job at Damian's character. It gave me a higher bar for Damian's appearance here, and I felt like Damian was kind of the same character he always is, and he wasn't either likable or just didn't have the chemistry I wanted with Jonathan in this issue. I'm sure in the other series he will, in the Super Sons issue or series. So I gave this 3 stars. Definitely not a bad issue. Enjoyed it, but the artwork does get me away from the story, and the Damian and John dynamic I liked. I like when they were punching each other. I thought that was hilarious, but it needs a little bit more for me. And again, that might just be the art style where I couldn't get into the story initially. So Superman issue 10 gets 3 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 10, which is Hellchild the Unholy, issue 1, which I thought was a fun issue. Very well done artwork. I like that they actually show the fangs and the monster part of her a little bit more. Feel like some comics kind of stay away from that. And it's, even though I still don't feel like we know Hellchild enough, that was kind of my complaint with the first miniseries. Like, I really like her character and her potential, but I want to know more about her character before putting her into all these situations. And that goes the same thing. I don't feel like I know her enough to want to care for her as a lead, but I do like her plot a lot here, and I am interested to see where the character goes. So I gave this issue 3.5 stars. Alright, so that was number 10, and we are moving on to number 9. And that was The Flintstones, issue 5, which I felt like this was a weaker issue than usual, but still a strong issue in the overall, because we get to see a little bit of election parody here, especially I would say more in Pebbles' story and Bam Bam's story in this issue, where we get a very similar character to Donald Trump. And then we see Pebbles ends up becoming like president of their school, which was a lot of fun. And then the story that I really liked, but also I think faltered in this issue, was the flashback where we see Barney and Fred go to war. I like the part about the family. I enjoyed that we learned that Barney couldn't have a child. I thought that was a really strong story, and there was payoff in the end, but I feel like the pacing of the war story could have been a little bit better. So the Flintstones issue 5 for me, though, is definitely an issue you should pick up and a series that you should pick up, but I do think there are previous issues that are stronger than this one. So the Flintstones issue 5 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 8, which is a book that I was really surprised by because I kind of picked up at whim, and that was Occupy Avengers issue 1. So, again, I picked this up in whim. I didn't know what to really expect, but I feel like this is the Hawkeye series that Lemire should have written. Because after Matt Fraction's run, you know, there was a lot of hype over Hawkeye, and Matt Fraction put Hawkeye in a new direction, really showing that he is this normal guy in New York City just trying to be an Avenger. He's the normal guy of the Avengers, and I think that's really heightened here, especially with the events of Civil War II. So we get to see that Hawkeye is kind of loved in some areas of America, and people like that he defeated Hulk. I will say there is some, I guess, plot problems in this issue, but overall I thought it was a good setup for the rest of the series, especially as Hawkeye is a main character. I am curious who the other Occupy Avengers will be, but I liked Red Wolf's position in the beginning of the issue, even though joining the team was a little quick. And I do like the plot of water and water being poisoned. I didn't like the group that was controlling that. I thought they were a little boring, but I did like the concept. So that's where I say I think this book has a lot of potential. Some plot problems. Hydro Man kind of ends up randomly popping up in the issue in the end. But Occupy Avengers issue 1 gets 3.5 stars, and I'm definitely curious to see where this series goes. Alright, I think we're up to number 7. We Are, a book that I've been really liking, and I compare this in my individual review. It's weird that I did not like Avengers this week, and the same writer writes this book, and that is Champions issue 2. And they feel like completely different books because this issue is about building team chemistry. And again, one of my faults of Avengers was I felt like the team had no chemistry and they're all out of character. So here, this issue, Miss Marvel is like, hey, let's go to the woods and learn a little bit about each other and practice our powers. I will say there's some annoyances in this issue, Totally Awesome Hulk, where when he leaves the issue, I actually was happy. But overall, it's a solid issue. I like that we get to learn about these characters if you don't know them. I know all the characters, but you get to see them how they work as a team, which is very important for us to care about the future stories that they have to tell. And I thought they added Cyclops pretty well. So Champions issue 2 is the Avengers I was looking for in Avengers. So Champions issue 2 gets 4 stars, and that was number 7. Moving on to number 6, a book I've been really enjoying, and honestly, this has been one of my favorite Green Lantern story arcs in a very long time, and that is Green Lanterns issue 10, which is part 2, I guess, technically, a Phantom Lantern. Let me see if it's actually part 2. It's either the last part was part 0, or this is actually part 2. So either way, it's technically the second part of this Phantom Ring story arc, and with this issue, our 3 main characters, obviously Jessica and Simon, we get to see them as Green Lanterns and figuring out what they should do with the Phantom Ring. But technically our other main character in this issue is the guy who we learned from last issue, where we got an amazing backstory for him. We care about him as a villain, and he finally gets the Phantom Ring, and he's in awe, he loves this life, and he can't wait to, I guess, to defeat Jessica and Simon. But an interesting twist in this issue is that Jessica and Simon both want the Phantom ring for different reasons. So I like that, and I wonder how that's going to change their dynamic and how they want to defeat this guy who they don't even know is the Phantom Lantern yet. But a lot of fun. I like the mythology behind the Phantom Lantern and some great character moments in this issue. So Green Lantern's issue 10 gets a solid 4 stars, obviously very close to top 5, and that was number 6. Now we are moving to top 5. Number 5 was new book from Terry Moore, Motor Girl issue 1. I actually been trying to catch up with some of the Terry Moore stuff. I read some Rachel Rising and a little bit of Echo, and I was very interested in Motor Girl. And once again, Terry Moore does a great job at bringing us some interesting concepts for his world, but always focusing on the characters and how they react to the world. So we have Motor Girl, who is a veteran, and we don't learn that until like the middle of the issue, and it seems like she does have some problems. She does have some mental problems. She starts zoning out, she has headaches, we don't really know, what's going on. She doesn't remember everything, she doesn't really see reality the way it is. But then, she sees these aliens, and she has a friend that's a monkey, and I wonder if he's actually a monkey or not, but, yeah, she works as this mechanic, so she helps these aliens, fix up their ship. So now she's really curious about these aliens and what they're all about. So we'll see how that ends, but that is the first issue of our story here. And I really liked it. Like I said, the concept was really unique, but I liked our main character. Bringing a veteran character I think is great, especially a female veteran character. Don't think we see that in media enough. Always say that. So it's a really cool psychological story where you don't know if she's seeing reality with these aliens. So yeah, great first issues. I gave this 4 stars, and that was number 5 on my list. So now we're moving on to number 4, book that I feel like is always in my top 5, and that is Revival issue 44, which also gives us a really emotional issue here, where we do have Dana finally figuring out who M's killer is, and we learn a little bit more about the Amish assassin characters. We actually see her past, which is pretty tragic. And by the end of the issue, we have M and Dana and her father finally come together, but Dana brings in our villain, our killer, and M's dad gets so upset that he punches him and kills him. And what's interesting about that is the obvious theme of life and death, but especially in these last couple of issues, these last couple of chapters, it's been in the forefront of their discussions of how, what's immortality, what's not. And it was so interesting. I think one of my favorite lines and one of my favorite scenes in this issue is between our mother, the Amish mother, and M, where M says, I never noticed, how mortal we are, really. And just like, yeah, I know that's ironic coming from an immortal, but you don't realize it until you become pregnant or until you have a child on your own, how life is so short. So I love that scene because, again, it's such a contradiction. Great series. Love this story, and I'm upset that it's ending soon, but a really good chapter to Revival. I will say the reason it wasn't a little higher, there are a lot of moving parts in this issue. That's the one negative I have of Revival, is that there's so many characters, and focusing on the town, it does give us less time with M or Dana and the characters we care about. So Revival issue 44 gets 4 stars, and that is number 4. There's a lot of 4s there. Alright, so moving on to number 3, which is the Unworthy Thor issue 1. Yes, this is in top 5. I wasn't even going to pick up this issue because I'm not a huge Thor fan, but I said, you know what, it's a light week, I'll pick it up. Pleasantly surprised by this book. It's Thor dealing with his unworthiness and fighting and not being a god and seeing what that means as a person, as an individual. And then we find him finding Beta Ray Bill and Beta Ray Bill wanting to give him the hammer and Asgard being gone, and actual connections to Original Sin and Secret Wars where there's other hammers and we actually see that person on the moon. So I love that this actually feels relevant after those events, because I feel like those events were kind of forgotten and we just moved on. And you want to feel like those events have some sort of aftermath, and this book felt that way. So I really enjoyed it. And I like the themes of Thor feeling unworthy, and I'm curious if he's going to be able to find himself being a hero without being Thor, just being Odin's son. So very well done issue, solid book, and I give the Unworthy Thor issue 1 4 stars. Moving on to number 2, a book I really enjoyed, Catwoman Election Night issue 1. And both stories were a lot of fun. So you have a small story with Prez, which I really liked, even though I kind of wish the story concluded Prez a little bit more, but it does what Prez does best. It counters heavy topics in a way that's very parodizing, like gun control and birth control in these issues, or in this story. And then in the Catwoman story, we get a very parodized version of Donald Trump as Penguin, and then this new character who's running for mayor that's actually a killer and one of Catwoman's I guess foster sisters, who's like the Hillary Clinton of the book. Beautiful artwork, and I didn't expect this Catwoman story to have so much character development, and actually made me like this Catwoman story, because I'm usually not a big Catwoman fan, but it makes you care about who's running and the story overall. So really enjoyed this issue, and overall just a great book to have as we get into the actual election day. So Catwoman Election Night issue 1 gets 4.5 stars, and hopefully Meredith Finch could write a Catwoman book, because I would totally read that. So what is number 1? What is pick of the week? And that is Spider-Woman issue 13. I really enjoyed this book, and just the series in general, because it really builds Jessica's world, where I feel like other Spider-Woman books didn't. She has a supporting cast. You really understand her as a person, and there's some really great inner monologue there. But this issue is less about Jessica and more about her two supporting characters, which is Ben and Roger. And in the end, we don't know what's going on with Roger, because it looks like he's working for the Hobgoblin for some reason. And it seems like he's doing it for heroic reasons, but we won't know, because the Hobgoblin throws a bomb at him, and is he dead? Maybe. We don't know. It's comics, though. But he's also just a supporting character, so maybe he is dead. We don't know. And then Jessica, has to react to that by the end, and I'm very excited how she totally reacts to that in the next issue. Especially because we have a bombshell in this issue that Jessica doesn't know, that Roger loved her. So does Jessica feel the same way? Maybe she'll realize she does when he's gone. So very well done issue, especially because we actually get a little background with Roger's daughter, with his wife or ex-wife. So we definitely get a lot of emotional impact here when Roger does die, maybe? So a very emotional issue, very well done character-driven issue, great artwork from Veronica Fish. So I give Spider-Woman issue 13 4.5 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline. Of course, I have another Comic Uno episode next week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below. Check out my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. There are links. And let me know in the comments below, what was your worst pick of the week, what was your best pick of the week, and everything in between. And I will see you guys later. Bye.